The long drive from Seattle to Baltimore would be done in one trip. The pot had to make it there safely. Law enforcement and rival gangs must be avoided at all costs. Losing their cargo was not a risk they could take, and they were going through some states where pot smuggling carried serious jail time. However, one thing made everyone in the RV feel better. They had a police officer in their crew. As we know from countless news stories, any cop can become corrupt. This is the case of Alex Tripakti, a police officer who has been serving with the Seattle Police Department for 16 years before he was caught and arrested for pot smuggling and money laundering. However, I'll leave you to determine whether Tripakti is one of those officers that give the men in blue a bad name or whether he was just doing what he needed to do to get by. Welcome to the Trap Tree series. My name is LMC. Anyways, let's run it. So, getting right into it. Not much is known from Alex Tripakti. All we really know about him is that he was part of a 5-member community policing team in the Seattle Police Department's South Precinct. According to the department's website, this special policing unit is charged with taking care of severe, long-term problems within the neighborhood. They were not just the regular patrol officers, even though that was Tripakti's rank. They were specially chosen for their experience serving in the force and general overall reputation. No one expected Tripakti to be involved in anything illegal, especially considering that he was still on the force throughout his entire run as a pot pusher. His family and friends that were with him at trial were shocked, and it wasn't just because of his job that people were surprised he was dealing pot. Tripakti just did not seem like someone who would break the law. He was known as an upstanding citizen. Now, not to say that there isn't a particular look to those that are involved in the pot business, but looking at Tripakti, you would never suspect that then 44-year-old man was involved in anything illegal. He was just your average cop, but what he got mixed up in was certainly not average. Now, I do concede that it's probably his appearance that made it possible for him to run pot on the side while being an active member of the police force, and it was probably his trustworthy, appearance that made his brother-in-law approach him with the business opportunity in the first place. So Tripakti was not the ringleader or even the brains behind the operation, and considering that he had an actual full-time job, he probably wouldn't have been able to manage it. Instead, he worked for his brother-in-law. So Tripakti played an essential role, though, in his brother-in-law's business. Now, he rode along when they smuggled large amounts of pot, money, and possibly sometimes powder from Western Washington to the East Coast. Now, we have no idea why the brother-in-law, Twin Van Lay, thought it was a good idea to approach a cop to get him to move pot for him. Maybe there was something that Lay saw in Tripakti that let him know that Tripakti would be willing to do something illicit, or maybe Lay had something on Tripakti that was blackmailing him. We'll never know. Or maybe it was just family. Whatever the case, though, investigative records show that Tripakti was an integral part of Lay's operation, participating in multiple trips using his own RV. Other members of the crew sometimes moved pot using Tripakti's RV as well. Now, Tripakti would later confess to authorities that throughout all of the trips, he had always brought his badge and a gun. It turned out his job in the smuggling enterprise included more than just that. Before we jump back into the content, I want to say big shout out to our homies over at Dr. Smoke. If you guys go to drsmoke.com, use my code LMC, you're going to get 15% off your entire order. They got all different types of products, brands, all delivered, all compliant, all legal. They got mushrooms, they got Steezy, they got Mike Tyson's brand, they got cookies, they got all different types of stuff. So you guys go over there, check out some of their products, use my code LMC. You're also going to get, be supporting the channel. So very much appreciated. Anyways, big shouts out to our friends over at Dr. Smoke, and let's jump back into the content. As far as we know, Tripakti was making $15,000 for every single trip that he made. And as I've said, moving the products was not all that Tripakti did for Lay. In fact, that was not even his main job in the crew. Tripakti was primarily charged with using his skills as a police officer to keep an eye on Lay's various pot grow houses. It was his duty to make sure that the houses remained hidden from the prying eyes of the authorities. Pretty much ran security. Now, in addition to that, Tripakti provided Lay with insider information, keeping him informed on the arrests and the investigations that might have been connected to their operation. And for all his troubles, Tripakti received a monthly pay of $10,000. And this was aside from the $15,000 per trip he would take out east. So Tripakti was making a hefty sum from running pot, and he could have decided to resign and just be fine. But however, considering what his job in the pot smuggling operation was, he had to stay with the police in order to maintain that role, to keep tabs on everything, right? He was supplying the operation with valuable information that made it possible for them to run and make multiple trips without being caught. So there was no quitting for him. What's more, though, is being a police officer, Chapakte knew how important it was to hide your paper trail. So whenever he got his pay, he deposited the cash into his personal account, but he was careful to make the deposits in amounts less than $10,000. Now, the idea was to make sure that he didn't raise any red flags with the banks and, by extension, law enforcement. But that's not the only way that the crew tried to cover their tracks. Like every pot pusher worth their salt, Lay's crew laundered the proceeds. However, Lay decided to do it slightly differently. Instead of cleaning the money through standard businesses, Lay decided to launder his profits through a pot business called Tetra Holding Company. However, the company was still in the process of getting a license from the state of Washington by the time the operation was brought down. Now, something else was suspicious about the company is that, according to the documents, the company was owned by Lay's nephew, Hong Lay, and his girlfriend, Mai Feng Yu. However, the investigators found out that it was just a front. Lay was not just the only one actually running the business, he was also its primary investor. He decided to put the business under his nephew's name, both because of his own illegal activities and because he was a convicted felon, which prohibits him from owning and investing in a licensed pot business under Washington state law. Now, that said, the nephew was still involved in the running of the business. According to reports, Lay provided him with large sums of money to keep the business running, all of which could have amounted to over $1 million total, which is one of the many ways that the pot-pushing crew laundered the proceeds from their operations. Unfortunately for them, having an insider with the police was not enough to keep the operation out of trouble forever. Eventually, it all came crashing down. Now, there isn't exactly information on how long Chapakte was part of this pot smuggling business. What we do know is while he was supposed to be feeding Lay information, he himself was under surveillance by the FBI. Now, according to reports, the entire investigation had started 2 years before the guys were actually caught, while Chapakte himself had been under surveillance for about a year before he was apprehended. When the FBI found out that Chapakte might have something to do with Lay's operation, they immediately opened a public corruption case on him in addition to the drug investigation because he was still serving as a police officer at the time. They also monitored his house, placing a hidden camera on a utility pole just outside of his apartment, and they obtained warrants to tap his phone calls and track his phone, making it possible for them to gather information on all of the pot trips. So this went on for months, and Chapakte was none the wiser, but the investigation was just getting started. From 2015 till 2017, when the operation was taken down, the FBI continued to investigate the Lay-run pot business. And it was during these investigations that they found out in September of 2016 alone, the crew made 6 trips to the East Coast. What this means is that Chapakte could have made up to $90,000 in that month alone if he made every single one of those trips. They also had multiple trips in October and November of 2016, as well as March and April of 2017. And so you can do the calculations on how much Chapakte could have made in that period. They were making huge amounts of money, but not everyone would stay loyal. It was during one of these investigations that they arrested a Baltimore pot dealer who was caught with close to 200 pounds of the stuff. It just so happened that this guy was one of Lay's Baltimore customers. While he initially refused to snitch, his loyalty must have come with a price because in exchange for reduced charges, he told them everything. He willingly informed police that Lay, alongside a couple of other suppliers, typically front him pot and expect to be paid back once he has sold it. With all the information gathered from this Baltimore dealer, coupled with all of the data obtained from the surveillance on Chapakte, the FBI agents were finally able to arrest Chapakte and the others in May of 2017. The Seattle police immediately placed him on administrative leave without pay. However, Chapakte did not wait to be fired, which was definitely bound to happen. He decided to get ahead of it, resigning while the trial was going on. Speaking on the trial, there really wasn't much back and forth. The FBI had rock-solid evidence that showed Chapakte as part of the drug smuggling ring, and as a police officer, Chapakte must have known that trying to play games wouldn't work in this case. I mean, if you look at the FBI, they have, I think, a 97% conviction rate because they only pick cases that they know they're going to win at, and they also stack up a lot of evidence. Now, his attorney, David Gerke, did take the case in a slightly different direction. He pointed out that it is legal to use and possess pot in every state in the West Coast, and the court was basically going back to the dark ages with the whole pot smuggling prosecution thing. Unfortunately for them, pot is still illegal under federal law, as emphasized by U.S. Attorney Annette L. Hayes. This is why the FBI had to actually come into play as well. So, plus, the shipping unlicensed and untaxed pot across state lines, which is what Chapakte and the rest of them were doing, is still very much illegal, even under state law. So at the end of the day, in November 2017, Chapakte pleaded guilty to charges of conspiracy to distribute pot and money laundering conspiracy charges in the U.S. District Court. And it did not seem like the judge was going to go easy on him. The typical sentence for pot smuggling is a mandatory minimum 5-year prison sentence, and that fines could be up to $5 million. While the sentence for money laundering is typically up to 20 years in prison plus a fine of up to $250,000. Chepacte's sentencing happened in March of 2018, and at his sentencing hearing, U.S. District Judge Thomas S. Zilli said that Chepacte's actions were a shame on his badge, his department, and on his community, and deserved to be punished accordingly. He said that Chepacte's actions had, quote, eroded public trust in the police, end quote. Well, all in all, it looks like the judge's idea of appropriate punishment is 6 years in prison, with federal supervision after 4 years. Lay, on the other hand, got a 14-year sentence with federal supervision after 5 years in prison for being a ringleader of the operation. The other members of the operation, including Lay's nephew's girlfriend, got sentenced that ranged from around 3 to 6 years. Now, do you think that Chepacte got a lighter sentence because he was a police officer? Gangs and criminal organizations throughout history have always employed corrupt police. The gangs use them for protection and to provide them with information on rivals and ongoing police investigations. And this is exactly what Lay was doing with Chepacte. When individuals are given too much power without enough supervision, they can become susceptible to corruption. Chepacte ended up going down that route. It's hard to say whether he was coerced or acting on his own free will, but we do know he made a decent amount of money.
Being that this story is from my hometown of Seattle, it was, it hit home. And it was very interesting. 2015 is when I graduated from high school, and it was a really unique time because it was kind of a free-for-all in, Washington State, Seattle, because, we were the first states to legalize. We had 2-year buffer period where, literally I had delivery services at the very end of high school on Craigslist. We used to sell to ex-cops that would then sell to other active police officers because they only trusted, ex-cops. It was just a wild time, and I'm not gonna lie, yeah, corruption's bad for sure. But at the end of the day, this is a plant, and that timing was really a really unique time. It was a true free-for-all. I'm telling you, it was wild. It was many of you probably experienced it in your own states, but for folks that are from, my home state, from Seattle, they know what I'm talking about. That the era from 2013, 2012 to 2015, 2016, they kept going, right? Chepacte and his group kept going to 2017, but, anyways, what's your thoughts though? Let me know down below. By the way, guys, if you guys want to get exclusive content, if you want to get early access to content, we're going to be also rolling out some different classes, a bunch of other stuff. Go to www.highdesign.media. There's a free option to sign up. You're going to get access to tons of videos, tons of stuff for free. Free 99. There's also a paid option, so go check that out. But yeah, guys, definitely go www.highdesign.media. Follow me on all the social medias, by the way. Follow on Twitter. We're busting out on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, all that stuff. Stay connected with your boy. And yeah, man, we got some dope stuff rolling out here soon. Can't wait to show y'all. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this episode of the Trap Tree series. This is LMC, signing out.